Hey, welcome to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Every Friday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, you can find us here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Studio A. And we are simulcast on CJ Mars Radio, 365 Live, and normally hazyradio.com, but we're having some issues with that. We can't seem to get our show on air this evening, but we'll be back on there throughout the week and also next week. And you can find us throughout the week, again, on all these stations like wakeradio.us and firehorseradio.com. We're going to be broadcasting on Blogspot through Penny Entertainment on Saturday afternoons. And also we're setting up with WTRU Radio, and WTRU will also be on iHeart as well. So we're all over the place, okay? Tonight we got John Potash, and we're going to be talking to him about the Tupac murder, COINTELPRO in hip-hop. And next week, coming up, we got Ward Churchill and Bobby Seale. And we have a show coming up, too, about a guy who, what he did was he went in undercover into the Mormon church. And he wrote a book about that. So we got a lot of good stuff coming up. And don't forget my show last week with the old notorious Alan A. Bell, the hoaxer, who did all those hoaxes back in the 70s and 80s, and he's still doing hoaxes. He's still out there running around. You can catch that on the Opperman Report YouTube channel and also the Opperman Report Spreaker channel. I want to give a real quick shout-out to Cynthia McKinney. Last week she helped me out with a situation I had to deal with, and she helped me out with my Congressman, Dr. Joe Heck. And I had a little situation. They were able to intervene for me, and I want to give them both props for that. Another big shout-out to hip-hop producer and soon-to-be music mogul, custodian of records from New Jersey. And what this guy's doing, he's going to be putting out a record with some sampling of me. So I'm taking over the hip-hop community next. I'm going to be a hip-hop star. I'm going to be the next Vanilla Ice, coming right up. Okay. But tonight, like I said, we got John Potash. He's an incredible guy. Thanks for coming on. He's the author of the FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders, U.S. Intelligence's Murders, a Targeting of Tupac, MLK, Malcolm, Panthers, Hendrix, Marley, Rappers, and Linked Ethnic Leftists. Okay. And he got a forward on there from Pam Africa and Mumia Abdul-Jamal, and also from Fred Hampton Jr. So you can see he's got his credentials there going for him. He's got a book coming up on Amazon called Drugs as Weapons Against the U.S., the CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and other leftists. So I'm going to be looking forward to that. You can pre-order that on Amazon.com. And, of course, you can find the links to all this stuff on the Opperman Report blog. But let's introduce our guest, John Potash. John, you there?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Ed.
Oh, man, thank you so much. I'm really excited about this show. Why don't you tell the audience about yourself, about, you, and the books you've written and what you're about?
Sure. Well, I work for a living. I do counseling, and I've been doing it for about 25 years, working as a counselor, and started out with addictions counseling, and then went and got a master's and at Columbia University, and went to and now I do general mental health counseling, but I have an expertise in addiction because I've been doing it for years, and so starting that back in 1989 probably got me to be so interested in the second book that's coming out in November, and it's actually called Drugs as Weapons Against Us, not the U.S., but that's okay. It looks like a big U and a big S, so I can understand the mistake. But so I was writing that book, after about a year of doing drug and alcohol counseling and doing social activism. I was involved in anti-war organizing and things of that nature. And so I found out about the Kerry report very early on when I was doing anti-war organizing. And so I started writing about the CIA cocaine trafficking and then I ended up working on the second book first, and then the Tupac Shakur book was actually a tangent from the first book because him being such an icon, I thought that more people would be interested in something so immediate. I happened to just come across evidence about that there was a counterintelligence program targeting of him before he died. And I called his lawyer, Michael Warren, his New York trial lawyer, and he said, yeah, there's lots of evidence like you're talking about, and nobody's writing about it. And so I talked to him about the left-wing magazines that I'd like to submit an article to about this. So he gave me about a 2-hour interview back then, and I submitted to Z Magazine and The Progressive and Covert Action Quarterly, some of these national left-wing magazines. And no one would accept it at that point in time because they bought into the propaganda, which is Tupac was just this thug who wasn't really political. But finally, after Tupac died, Covert Action Quarterly published a lengthy article I wrote on the situation with over 50 endnotes. And what Tupac was about was the fact that his parents, his mother was one time head of the Harlem Black Panthers. His father was a Black Panther. He was raised to be what his mother called a revolutionary black prince from day one. When a local priest asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up when he was about 11 years old, he said a revolutionary, because that's what his family taught him. And he was head of a group called the New African Panthers when he was about 17 or 18 years old. And they were active in 8 cities nationwide. And their goal was to replicate the Black Panthers. They were, a very serious organization. So he was already being watched closely. And then when he broke into the rap world and added that fame and fortune to his political aspirations, he was immediately targeted. And at some time around breaking into the rap world, he decided he was going to develop a new political agenda, which was to pretend to be this gangster in order to appeal to gangs and politicize them. And that was part of his Black Panther extended family's mission, which was very successful, to get the Bloods and Crips to call peace truces amongst each other and turn into left-wing activists. And that was spreading throughout California, then spread across the country, to the point that the Latin Kings took it up. The Young Lords convinced the Latin Kings to take up part of this movement, and they stopped dealing drugs and turned into left-wing activists also. And there's books on that written by Columbia professors. But it was a big danger to the oligarchs, I argue, and I'll tell more about why in my next book. But I'll at least just say that all these gangs turning political and stopping their drug dealing and not killing each other off, which was, I argue, is one of their plans, is just to get them infighting so that they don't fight for, more rights for the black community. But that was a serious threat, and Tupac having peace truce picnics between Crips and Bloods and Crips gang leaders was a major concern. Him turning them on to radical activism, and partly through his lyrics, which had a lot of activist messages in them, early on, was a serious concern. And so from day one, they were murderously targeting him. As soon as he came out with his first video at MTV Worldwide release, he was like 3 days after release of the video, they stopped him supposedly for jaywalking and choked him unconscious and knocked his head into the curb.
Well, let me ask you this, okay? Because now, I was never really a big Tupac fan, of the music, and that movie Juice didn't turn me on at all. The poetry movie, I didn't like that at all. Mm-hmm. So that was my feeling. And also too, you remember how Tupac was in that group, Do the Humpty Hump? Right, Digital Underground, yeah. Yeah, right. So when I found out that guy was Tupac with the nose and the glasses, I said, "What? What are people talking about this guy? I don't see him as a revolutionary." But then. But then, wait a second. When I knew his mother was connected to the Black Panthers. I knew that, okay? But it was always kind of like marginalized. She was a Black Panther, very activist, right? But give us an idea of this guy's credentials in the Black Panther Party, and his father and his stepfather and his mother and all these people.
Yeah, it does go way back, because his mother, Fanny Shakur, was an amazing woman. She was, one time, as I say, leader of the Harlem Black Panthers, which was huge. Harlem Black Panthers, their numbers aren't known for sure, but there's estimates, that they were, easily over 1,000. There was just incredible numbers they had for their membership. But and they elected her as head of the Harlem Black Panthers when her husband was in jail, and she was elected to be as part of the Panther 21 that were framed, put in jail for what was the longest trial in New York history at that time. They voted.
Yeah, that was one of my lawyers, Jerry Lefcourt.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, he's a great lawyer. But anyway, so they elected for so the Panther 21 elected for Faney to be the first one released to be their spokeswoman after she was married to Lumumba Shakur, who founded the Harlem Black Panthers. And Lumumba's father was Sayuddin Abba Shakur. He was in the UNIA, United Negro Improvement Association, part of Marcus Garvey's group, and so as was Malcolm X's father. So when Malcolm X started organizing in New York and got big in New York and started the Organization for African American Unity, Sayuddin Abba Shakur became one of his closest associates. And so he was a close confidant of Malcolm X's, Sayuddin Abba Shakur. Then he had some sons, Zaid and Lumumba Shakur, who were in Malcolm X's group. They adopted a few more sons, Sayuddin Abba Shakur and his wife, and one of them was Mutulu Shakur. So after Malcolm X was assassinated, the Panther leadership in California asked Lumumba Shakur to start the Harlem Black Panthers and they asked Lumumba's close friend Sekou Odinga to start the Bronx Black Panthers, and for Zaid Shakur to be the Minister of Information for the Bronx Black Panthers. So the Shakurs were heavily connected with the top movements on the East Coast, top black, progressive / revolutionary movements on the East Coast. And so Faney married Lumumba. She then, when she was elected to be the spokesperson for the Panther 21, she actually got pregnant with another Black Panther, and Lumumba divorced her. But she got pregnant with another Black Panther's child, and that was Tupac. So she was then brought back into jail, or bail was revoked, and she was pregnant with Tupac in jail, and actually gave birth to him about a month after leaving jail. But she was pretty amazing because she defended herself in court and was credited by a lot of the jury for getting the whole, Panther 21. They were actually down to 13 at that point, but all the Panthers off in court because of the amazing work she did in court without a college education. She did amazing work. And then when she got out of jail, she was asked to lecture all over the country. She had a huge name. She got honorariums to lecture at Yale and Harvard and just all over the place. But then intelligence started visiting her jobs and having potential employers not hire her, and jobs she did get, they visited and convinced these employers to fire her. So she was in bad shape. But she was living with Mutulu Shakur at that point, which was, of course, Lumumba's adopted brother. But Mutulu had started an acupuncture clinic in the Bronx because he gotten a degree in acupuncture, and he had co-founded the Republic of New Africa in Detroit, which was another national black group that was in solidarity with the Black Panthers. And so they were doing great work together, even though they were having a hard time, struggling economically. They were doing great work together in New York until Mutulu had to go underground because of the botched Brinks robbery, which Mutulu was in no way part of, but they end up saying that he was a co-conspirator in it for God knows what reason. There was no physical evidence they had linking him to the robbery. He was not there.
Yeah, I could never quite understand that because at the time of the botched Brinks robbery, as you mentioned, by the way, I had no idea that Dr. Shakur, Mutulu Shakur, was Tupac Shakur's father. That blows my mind. Okay.
Yeah, stepfather.
Yeah, stepfather. Because see, what happened was, around that time in 1981, 82, around the time of that robbery. Mm-hmm. I was a member of the Yippies on the Lower East Side of New York City. Okay. And so I knew a lot of these guys. I knew Reverend Herbert Daughtry, the one you mentioned before,
right?
Who had Tupac said, "Hey, I want to be a revolutionary when I grow up." I can totally buy that, But the thing is, now there was some kind of connection between the acupuncture location and Dr. Matula Shakur and the radio station WBAI in New York City. Because we used to go down to BAI, and I did a little producing down there as well. And what happened is that after this happened, and they arrested Dr. Shakur, the acupuncture guy is how I knew him. Everyone, because he had been coming, everyone at the station freaked out because he used to come up to the radio station. Now, what kind of connection did he have to the radio station?
Well, he was just involved in so much activist work.
In public speaking?
Yeah, he would. I mean, he'd do public speaking. He was doing organizing. He was, doing coalition building with, Bernadine Dorn's sister was working at the acupuncture clinic with him.
Okay.
Plenty of SDS people and Weather Underground connected people were working at the acupuncture clinic. And so they were doing a lot of political education at the acupuncture clinic also. And, of course, the city didn't like that, and they defunded the clinic and tried to close it down. I mean, they surrounded it with marshals to keep the workers from going there because they wouldn't even allow them to go there for free. The workers kept it going despite being defunded by the city. And it's just unbelievable what they did. Actually, you'll see in my next book. But the doctor there, a white doctor, was actually I think a grandson of the Roosevelts. I mean, he was very, he had a real blue blood lineage, but he was doing great work, and he ended up getting found dead with. I forget, Matulu describes on his website, but basically somehow drugs were forced subcutaneously under his skin. It was a very strange thing. It was some kind of strange message that they were giving by killing this guy and somehow getting drugs into his body physically, because the guy didn't do drugs. He didn't have a drug problem. And they'd done the same thing to Asad Shakur's lawyer. I believe his name was Stanley Cohn. And he was also, Matula Shakur said he was the best lawyer for that acupuncture clinic. He got them out of so many jams, and he had so much great evidence to keep Asad Shakur out of jail, and he ended up being found dead with the same thing, drugs somehow forced into his body in some strange physical way when the guy didn't have any kind of drug problem. And it was some kind of strange message, like, you better stop this, what you're doing with this acupuncture clinic. And this, it was basically, he was getting it to go national, this acupuncture for drug detox. And it has gone national even after Matulu's been in jail for all these decades. I got trained at his old Lincoln detox clinic, actually, in acupuncture. Yeah, I got trained. I got certified in doing acupuncture for drug treatment up there in the Bronx. But of course, this is just in the early 2000s.
Okay.
But the same doctor, actually, another doctor that was there that didn't die, remembers Matulu very fondly. Told me great things about Matulu. But so nonetheless, so Tupac was actually volunteering at that clinic when he was 9 years old. He was doing, or 8 years old, whatever, before Matulu had to go underground. He was doing things at that clinic. This is what he grew up around.
Let me ask you a question. How come Tupac
and all that stuff?
Yeah, how come he never mentioned, though, that, hey, my stepdad is doing 60 years in prison over that Brinks job? Did he ever say that publicly?
Well, he said, he mentions Matulu in a few albums, actually. This is to my, his last album, he mentioned him. In his first album, in Words of Wisdom, he mentions them. He says, free all political prisoners. This is for my teachers, Matulu, Geronimo, meaning Geronimo Pratt's godfather, who's head of the L.A. Black Panthers. And of course, Mumia. He mentions Mumia a lot in his last album, a few times, And so, for someone like him to be the biggest voice of the black community before he died, to be saying free Mumia, free Geronimo Pratt, free Matulu, when this album that sold, incredible amount, like literally there's the second fastest album of all time, second fastest selling album of all time. The only album that sold faster in its first week out was the Beatles' greatest hits, like a year before, 2 years before. And so that's what kind of, reach he had before he died.
And okay, another thing too is I wanted to ask you is that now I had asked Mark Rudd. I had Mark Rudd on the show, and I wanted to ask him. So I didn't even know about the Tupac connection with the Shakur, with the Matula Shakur, but I wanted to ask him about Matula Shakur and that acupuncture clinic, because I heard him on another interview, and he was claiming that he wasn't in touch with any of those guys who had done the Brinks job, and that he thought that they were selling drugs, that it was a drug operation.
What?
Yeah, I heard. This is why I was asking him.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's got some evidence of that, I'd like to see it.
Wait, he said he heard it on the grapevine, you know?
Oh God, that's an ugly thing to put out there.
Right. And
I mean, these people were risking their lives to keep that clinic going. I mean, literally, they were getting killed, and they tried to keep it going anyway. So yeah, that's really something, and that clinic's revered. Even when I was in Baltimore, before I even got, I even knew who Matula Shakur was in 1989 when I first got into drug, addictions counseling. We got our first acupuncture clinic in Baltimore, and somebody was boasting about how they learned it from, in the Bronx at the original clinic in Lincoln Detox, and everyone knew, all addictions counselors knew that the place to be trained if you wanted to get the best training in the country was Lincoln Detox, and where they started it, where Matula Shakur started acupuncture treatment for addictions. So that's just too bad. I don't know what's happened to Mark Rudd, but anyway.
Yeah, well, then in your firsthand experience, right? Have you noticed and experienced in organizing anti-war demonstrations, infiltrators and provocateurs and people that are agents and people you suspected were agents and all kinds of stuff?
Oh yeah, well yeah, sure I have.
Yeah.
I don't know. You never know for sure, but you definitely suspect when they do some strange things. Sure. I mean, there's different times. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I asked Mark Rudd the same question. He says, nope. I never saw anything, So
I mean, people admitted they had gotten, had infiltrated weather underground cells.
Well, even my work with the Yippies in the 80s, there was all kinds of comings and goings with all kinds of people, There's just constant agitation going on, you know?
It's hard to say. I know 2 Yippies that were undercover agents.
Oh, really?
Yeah. George Demerly was one of them.
I didn't know him.
Part of the crazies.
Okay, who else?
The other one, I forget his name, but he was played the bodyguard for Jerry Rubin at the Peace Fest, at that 1968 famous convention festival.
Okay, that's interesting. I'll have to look into that. But I did know a lot of people around that were definitely drug informants and FBI informants and all kinds of.
Sure.
Forget it. That was galore going around. Yeah. And
in Tupac's life, of course, I talk about Haitian Jacques Agnant.
Right.
Who, Michael Warren got his rap sheet from a probation officer who, and he said it was a huge list of convictions of charges up and down the East Coast for major stuff, and they were all dismissed, which is a sure sign of a government agent. He told me. And so, and then that guy goes into court, and he's got this long, 2-decade Policemen's Benevolent Association lawyer, representing him.
Oh, who was his lawyer? I bet I know who it was. That was that guy with the...
Yeah, I'd have to look up. I think it was Brenner. His name was Brenner.
Oh no, I'm thinking I'll never remember his name now. Because I'm from New York, but it's been so long. But I know that the PBA lawyer and he became a big lawyer after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And you're absolutely right too. Yeah. There's some people, man, they can get arrested over and over and over again, and all they have to do is just go in and talk to the probation department and get right out. They have their informants. Hey, now, speaking of which, that brings me to my memory. The Wu-Tang Clan. How did that fit in with all this?
Well, I guess in this book I don't get far into the Wu-Tang Clan, but I do cover the fact that some undercover police officers we found they were part of the street crimes unit, the undercover unit that got caught with shooting 41 shots at Amadou Diallo.
Yeah,
got a guy just standing in a stairwell, and and Bruce Springsteen wrote a song about it. Well, that group basically came upon one of the lead singer for Wu-Tang Clan, stopped his car. Him and the guy in his passenger seat was a guy named Fred Cuffey. They were both, or I know Cuffey was, and I think ODB was too, on a list of COINTELPRO. Basically a rap unit list to be watched, and they stopped him for no reason, and then they shot at him when they tried to just leave. Here are undercover people. Here's just plainclothes guys with guns stopping you for no reason, and so he fled them. And basically, there's a number of attacks on the Wu-Tang Clan, and then they got an undercover agent who was working with the FBI, who was a top ecstasy dealer named Michael Caruso. He ends up getting himself to be manager of two members of the Wu-Tang Clan. And I think the reason they were so concerned about Wu-Tang Clan is because a serious black activist named Sonny Carson, he changed his name to a Muslim name, I forget the exact Muslim name now, was a very serious black liberation movement activist who was very close with the Panthers, and was highly esteemed in Brooklyn.
Oh yeah.
And he owned the recording studio, and he was producing Wu-Tang Clan. And ODB's brother was a serious activist who was co-producing them. And they were, a lot of their money was going into some serious activists, like Sonny Carson. And the Rap Intelligence Unit didn't like that, of course. So I think that's why they targeted them. But in the case of Tupac, when you brought up, undercover, agents or provocateurs, it turns out that Death Row Records was one huge undercover group of agents. And I don't say that lightly. I say that because of the fact that Russell Poole, a high-level white police detective who received tons of commendations, he got himself assigned to the Biggie Smalls murder investigation because of some other case he stumbled upon. So they let him be the investigator with someone else. And he ends up finding his fellow police officers, dozens of them at all levels of Death Row Records. And he's like, what the hell's going on here? And so he goes to Superior and asks him, what's this about? And he says, well, you can call them troubleshooters or covert agents. And so because they thought, here's a high-level white cop, we can trust him. But he was not, good about that. He's like, I can't believe this is going on. And so he tried to get, Suge Knight and Dave Kenner and the whole group charged with what he found was that they killed Biggie Smalls. And then he found basically that they killed Biggie Smalls to cover up their murder of Tupac Shakur. And he tried to go forward with that, and they ruined his life at that point. They ruined his career. So he said it was getting so bad at the police force that he had to resign in order to get the word out about what he found. And he held a press conference. And, his life was very rough at that point. But Nick Broomfield saw the press conference and made a film out of it, Biggie and Tupac, with him as the star. And Randall Sullivan, the veteran reporter, wrote the book Labyrinth, which was an excellent book using all of Russell Poole's sources and all of Russell Poole's information and police files. So,
Well, okay. Well, let me ask you, what do you think of Nick Broomfield and his work? What do you think? Because I saw you writing. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I know not everyone realizes it takes studying this case to the umpteenth level, like you could see in my book with the over 1,000 endnotes, to understand that Nick Broomfield did something unbelievable with that film.
Okay.
Truly unbelievable. He got this police detective saying all these things about his fellow police officers. He got these guys, saying this Kevin Hackey saying, I worked for the FBI. I was undercover for the FBI, and I was put as Tupac's bodyguard. Okay, and I think that the Death Row Records, basically set up Tupac. They murdered Tupac. They helped orchestrate Tupac's murder.
Yeah, because
so that's an unbelievable thing. To get these guys saying that on film is incredible.
Okay, yeah, I like his movies, and I had Courtney Love's dad on here on the show, and I had some involvement with Nick Broomfield as well. I arranged an interview with my client. Shelley Tripp was involved in that big scandal with in Alaska with Todd Palin when he did that Sarah Palin movie.
I didn't know about that movie.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, it didn't do that well, you know. And he mentioned Shelley Tripp in the movie, but I think he had an agenda with that. He wanted to portray. We're going off on a tangent.
You can't. I can't say I don't even care about Nick Broomfield.
Yeah,
I just care about the fact that these guys said these things on film for him, you know. And so we have the document. It's an important document to help, you know, to get these firsthand sources. And I argue Kevin Hackey actually turned on the FBI, and he basically says this. He says they put him in jail for doing what he did. He turned on the FBI and told Tupac not to go to Las Vegas. And he said, you know, don't go to Vegas. And Tupac almost listened to him and went to Atlanta instead, which he actually said go to Atlanta, where his New African People's Organization comrades were. You know, this business manager, Watani Tayahimba, was a founding security director for the New African People's Organization. His lawyer, Tupac's national lawyer, was Chokwe Lumumba, who was head of the New African People's Organization, the founding director. And that was a group, that organization was full of Republic of New Africa activists and former Black Panthers. And it was a national group. It was a very important national group. And you might know, Chokwe Lumumba, you know, ended up getting elected as mayor in, did you hear about that in Mississippi?
No, I did not know that. No, but I know the name. I've heard the name, yeah.
Yeah, he was amazing. It was like a real coup because no one expected him to be such a radical figure to be elected mayor of a southern city. But he won the election and won a lot of people over, and then died, sadly enough, before like a year of a tenure as mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. But he was an amazing guy, and he was Tupac's national lawyer, as I said. So Tupac was funding these kinds of people. You know, he was funding these excellent activists. But so, as I say, you know, you got some of these people on film, and they basically, you know, add up the fact that, you know, Russell Poole shows the evidence of how what happened in terms of these undercover, police officers basically orchestrated Tupac's shooting.
Well, it wasn't just undercover, because Suge Knight would hire off-duty cops.
Yeah, undercover is not even the best word. Well, some were moonlighting, and some were undercover. It was a mixed bag. And then also, as I say, Russell Poole's superior called them covert agents. So you can take it at that.
And at one point, Suge Knight was renting a home or an apartment to the DA in California that was involved in a case he was involved in.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, what were the details on that?
Yeah, this guy named Larry Longo, he was renting a home to, and the thing about that is people say, oh well, that's how he got over on the prosecutor's office, because he had that connection there, and it just doesn't make sense. I mean, it's just an excuse, because he got off of major charges before he got any connection with Larry Longo. Suge Knight was committing worse and worse, more violent, crimes. And then all of a sudden he's still committing violent crimes, and he stops getting charged at all for years. From about 1991 to 1996, he was untouchable. He was committing all these violent crimes. Russell Poole has the reports of him drug trafficking and gun running. Death Row Records in general was drug trafficking and gun running. And
because Death Row was founded by the
Michael Harry O. Harris.
Yeah, who was partners with the Freeway.
Right, Freeway Ricky Ross, right? Yeah, he was one of the two understudies of Freeway Ricky Ross, and Freeway Ricky Ross was getting his drugs, of course, his mass amounts of cheap cocaine from these Latin American, traffickers that were CIA assets. So yeah, it goes very deep. And,
okay. I'm gonna have to read some commercials, okay? But let's get into all of that. Like, how is it that all these guys? It just seems like a lot of these rap guys have a side business or got their start in the drug business and are untouchable. Okay, so let me just read some. Think that over, and we'll get to that when we get back. Okay, where are we here? Okay, hey, welcome to the Outward Report. Don't forget our sponsors, our really loyal sponsors, like Pacific West Bamboo. 503-839-8126. You can find her on Facebook. They're your number one source for timber construction, craft-grade bamboo poles, plants, products. They specialize in eco-friendly, reclaimed wood products for the home and garden. Give a call over there to Amanda at Pacific West Bamboo, 503-839-8126, because they can and do ship nationwide. Whatever your project is, if you're doing a little art project and you need a little bamboo, or you're doing a big, giant construction project, Amanda is a big shot in the bamboo importing and growing her own bamboo even. And this woman, if there's anything involving bamboo, whatever, give a call to Amanda over at 503-839-8126. She's a huge supporter of this show, and I really want to support her as well. Okay, guys, I got my own problems. GoFundMe, okay? If you go to my GoFundMe page, it's called Help Save My Family by Ed Opperman. And we're in dire straits here. We really do need your help, okay? Or you could just make a PayPal donation to oppermanreport@gmail.com. Okay, my whole situation, maybe we can get into it later on in the after show after our guest goes to bed. But, we're in trouble and we need your help. Mike Gray from infinityhomeplans.com. Now, check out Infinity Home Plans and Design Services. Your resource for 3D and 2D architectural services. They offer a multitude of products, including stock home plans, 2D digital drawing sets, 3D models, renderings, and more. That is Mike Gray over at infinityhomeplans.com. Check him out. Okay, don't forget my daughter, Victoria. She has a show, Teen Truth. It's on cjmarsradio.com, 1 p.m. Saturday. She has a big show coming up tomorrow. She's also going to be rebroadcast on Shake and Wake Radio on Sundays. Okay, and emailrevealer.com, that's the home of the online infidelity investigation. You can go to emailrevealer.com and you can check out and see if your spouse is cheating on you. You give us her email address and we could trace it back to all the online dating websites. If you're in some kind of litigation, you need an asset search done, we can do that for you within 30 days. If you're being stalked online, you need a name and address from an email address, we can do that for you. You can locate people, all kinds of stuff. If you think your email account is being spied on, you have an ex-boyfriend that's spying on your email account, give us a call. We can help you out with that, 800-448-0772, emailrevealer.com. Now, my New World Mexican women. Okay, now these women here, they just sent me their book, and I have a better idea of what it is they're trying to accomplish. We have a sponsor from Mexico, from Guerrero, Mexico, okay, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly because these New World Mexican women love to email me during the week and complain about how I pronounce the state in Mexico. But their book is called New World Mexican Women, and it's how to make your own traditional Mexican jewelry. And I've been describing this book. There's a link to this book, by the way, on the Opperman Report blog, and also I put up links to this book all the time on my Facebook page. So you could find it that way, or you go to lulu.com and you put in New World Mexican Women, or you can just go to Google and put in New World Mexican Women, and it comes up. Now, the first half of this book, and there's illustrations, there's photographs, and there's handwritten love letters of these women to their husbands, their sons, their brothers, their uncles, who have traveled to the United States from this small state in Mexico to earn money in the United States and send it back to them. And in these letters, you can see the handwritten letters, and then there's the translation. And there's just beautiful drawings of these women and their children begging their men to come back, and just love letters almost. And then in the second half of the book, they have how to make authentic Mexican jewelry. And it's step-by-step projects and crafts. I don't know if they have any kind of crafts here that would involve bamboo, but if they do, give a call to Pacific West Bamboo. But they have all kinds of jewelry craft projects here that you can look up step-by-step. And these women here, they're supporting the show. And I really want to make sure that we support them as well. So check out the book. It's a very large book. It's a colorful cover. It would look great on your what do you call, your coffee table, and you're supporting these women in this village down there in Mexico who need our support. Okay, let's face it. Okay, we're here tonight with John Potash. Okay, and I got to apologize to John too because I've been mispronouncing his name all the past month. But he's written a couple of great books, The FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders. And another book is coming up, Drugs as Weapons Against Us. And you can pre-order the second book on Amazon. The first book, you can pick it up right now. You could have it in your mailbox in about a week. We got a link to those books on my blog, The Opperman Report. So now, John, I was going to ask you, how the hell is it that a lot of these guys, and I don't want to mention any names, but it just seems like almost every one of these big rap producers either had a history of selling drugs, or is even still some of them still how are they making their living? How is Suge Knight making a living today?
Well, I don't know how Knight's making a living today.
Yeah.
But I know that, there was just Russell Poole showed a number of reports and detailed the evidence of how Suge Knight and Dave Kenner and Death Row was trafficking drugs then, during its era, 92, 96 at least. But I guess, I don't know if Reggie Wright Jr., who took over Death Row while Suge Knight was in jail, I don't know if he continued to traffic drugs. I imagine he did, but I'm not sure. So I can't say I've researched heavily all the different rappers and producers that might have gone from drug dealing to rapping and are still dealing or trafficking. I'm sorry that there's just so many topics to cover that to keep my book Drugs as Weapons Against Us to a decent length, I just had to cover one solid area of each different drug and each different situation. And so with Tupac and Death Row, I covered that, and I covered a little bit with the this major ecstasy dealer, Michael Caruso and Wu-Tang Clan. And now, granted, when Wu-Tang Clan found out who this guy really was, Michael Caruso, they fired him immediately. But he was a major ecstasy trafficker. He was bad news. He was working for the FBI undercover. And they let him off, and they just insert him into to another position, and they said it was to say they were investigating possible gun running in Wu-Tang, and then they found no evidence of gun running, so they didn't charge anyone.
Well, that's interesting because I'm from Staten Island, and Wu-Tang was from Staten Island. But didn't they have some kind of a connection to Georgia or something like that? There was some kind of gun running allegations with Wu-Tang. No, was it Georgia or something like that?
Yeah, allegations, but they never went anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those guys were all innocent. They would never do anything.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
No, I know, man. I know. Listen, I don't know anything. Yeah. I can't convict them. I can't testify against anybody.
Yeah, but there's other like non-political rappers that are massively into drug trafficking, drug dealing, and I show, for example, one part of my book, Drugs as Weapons Against Us, gets into these ecstasy dealing rap groups. They name their group after slang for ecstasy, or their rap production groups. Fizz Entertainment. Fizz is apparently a slang for ecstasy, and they were trafficking for a decade or more. And they had they say they had these undercover agents as part of their company, and the undercover agents said they were just there to investigate, but they investigated for 10 plus years without doing anything about it. They just were part of the trafficking. So I show, that kind of stuff that was going on for sure.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Like some guys just get away with it forever, yeah. Okay, yeah, all right. I guess with the network of informants and stuff like that, you make deals. Okay, now,
I wanted to get into, if you don't mind, just some of the evidence about the murder attempts of Tupac before he even died.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, in Atlanta, it's misconstrued, but basically, reportedly off-duty police officers, two white off-duty police officers, witnesses say that they were messing with some black guy in another car right when Tupac's came from a concert and was driving up to the light with a caravan of cars, like some friends behind him and bodyguards behind him, and Tupac rolled his window down and says, "What's going on?" According to witnesses, these white police officers immediately start running to his car. Tupac rolls the window up. They smash the window of his car and shoot at him. Okay, and of course, it was very misinterpreted in the press as Tupac shot at them first, or he got into a fight with them and everything else. But eyewitnesses said it the way I said it, and so Tupac didn't have a gun on him. partly because had already had some gun charges and didn't want to get another gun charge. So he rolls out the back of his car, grabs a security guard's gun in back of him, and gets down on one knee and shoots back at the officers. And then, meanwhile, the officers are in plain clothes because they said they're off duty. He hits them. He hits them a few times in the butt and the leg. So they end up charging Tupac with, assault, with a gun and all. And they come to find out with the trial that these officers were using a gun that was stolen from one of their evidence lockers. And another police officer in a different trial I show called that a throwaway gun. In case you shoot someone, without good cause, you can just throw it. You can just lay it down and not have it traced back to you.
Well, did it actually go to trial, or they dropped it before the trial?
Well, they dropped it in the at some point when it was in court. They dropped it completely.
Yeah, because they'll always do that. If you can prove there was something in the chain of custody with the evidence, they'll drop it before trial because they don't want that on record that cops are going in, walking into the evidence locker and walking out with stuff because it's very common.
I guess that's one reason, and another reason I would think is that they wanted to hide what was really going on because they knew they had Tupac under serious surveillance by this point.
Well, let me ask you this: the guy that was getting rousted by the two off-duty cops, what's his story? Have you talked to him?
I didn't get to talk to him, but I talked to Tupac's Atlanta trial lawyer who did talk to him.
Okay.
He says he doesn't really know what to make of that guy. He just doesn't, he doesn't suspect anything about that guy. But he did say that some of the white and black witnesses he interviewed, like a white couple who was at the light, said it looked like a white gang attacking a black guy in his car when they ran over to Tupac's car and smashed his window and shot at him. They didn't know what to make of it, but that's what they described. And so, it was just a very highly suspicious situation. It definitely appeared like murder attempt number 2 or 3, actually, by that point.
Yeah, and for people to say that, hey, how could these cops stage this and know that Tupac was going to be driving by and know that Tupac was going to jump out, it's very possible that they had staged 10 previous events just like it, and Tupac did drive by. But this one time he saw it and they had their opportunity. Yeah,
it's true. I agree. And the thing is, it's just they were doing psychological profiling by that point in time. It was a regular thing to psychologically profile someone who you want to set up. And so Chukwu Lumumba is a lawyer who was Tupac's national lawyer. Said they've been doing psychological profiling since the 70s.
Yeah.
And so under that psychological profile, and I argue that they did the same thing to Huey Newton in the 70s. They basically had the FBI was renting an apartment right next to Huey Newton, and that guy in that apartment was dealing drugs. So they raided his apartment at 5 a.m. in the morning, and they went in and had their guns out and were screaming. And Huey Newton was tempted, he said, to go out and check out what was going on. Then he realized, wait a minute, this might be a setup to do me in. So he wouldn't come out of his door. But he thinks that was a psychological profiling attempt to kill him there. And he later found out that the FBI was the one that was actually renting that, next door, apartment to him. It was a black guy who was living there. But he found out that the FBI was actually renting it, and that was an undercover agent. And so he wrote about that in his book, War Against the Panthers, Huey Newton did. And so Mumia Abu-Jamal's case is a similar situation, right, where his brother, Billy Cook, Mumia's original name was Wesley Cook, his brother ends up getting beaten within eyesight of Mumia, and within a block of where Mumia was late at night, at 3 a.m. at night. And then it brings Mumia over. He runs over to see what's going on when he sees, hears and sees his brother getting beaten on the head by a cop. And then when he gets there, he's shot. And a guy in jail signed an affidavit saying, I was hired. I was a contract killer, and I was hired to kill that cop, to shoot that cop. That was my job. I was told it was, he wasn't following the plan, some kind of corrupt plan. But he said, then I saw someone else who was in dreadlocks come over and assist and shot that cop too, and then ran away. And so I argue that was another psychological profiling scenario to draw Mumia into a situation where he could either be killed or sent to jail and given the death penalty.
Yeah, it's amazing how much there is this infiltration and manipulation, even in low-level activists. Like they don't want to tolerate any dissension or any resistance whatsoever.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? I got to get out of this instant messaging because I accidentally started reading that and I couldn't hear what you said.
Oh no, that's okay. That happens to me all the time. So
You told me about it and I never knew about it. Now I started actually. I shouldn't have.
And leave our guest alone, okay?
That's my fault. I closed it out. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that, Ed?
Well, it was just that I was saying that because Mumia wasn't like a huge activist at the time. He was driving a cab. He had some radio background, but he wasn't like a huge national figure like he is now. That's for sure. And it's
he actually was a very serious activist, though.
Yeah, sure. But really no more than you or me, And,
no, he was more than you or me because I mean, and maybe not you, but me, because the fact that he was, he was head of the Black Journalists Association of Philadelphia. He had been on NPR. He'd been on, he'd been on the public radio station. He was, really respected throughout Philadelphia for his journalism, and he was covering the MOVE. He was the only one that was giving a true account of what was going on with the MOVE organization. Yeah,
well, I had a remote Africa on as well, and I tell you, that's another thing, man. That's a story you never hear about, man. There's a woman, man. She's they're burning her alive. She's trying to escape. They're shooting at her and a little kid while they're trying to escape, and then they give her 15 years in prison on top.
Unbelievable, huh?
It is unbelievable, and you hear about Waco every 5 minutes, and these other things,
right.
But this is the one. My God, they burned down a whole block, 60 homes.
Two city blocks burned to the ground. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I was living in Philadelphia at the time. I was actually going to Swarthmore right outside Philadelphia, and I just saw the pictures on the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer. It was incredible.
Yeah.
It looked like a bomb had been dropped on 2 city blocks of Philadelphia.
Yeah, it really is. It really is shocking, oh my God. Okay, so what do you think? So we were just talking about though that how they'll even because I was saying that I didn't think that Mumia was that big. Because I'm thinking of guys like, Amiri Baraka, who was the program director at BAI. I know he was being harassed and stuff like that, but they didn't try and kill him and set him up for murder, and things like that. But they're very intolerant of any resistance or any kind of from even the average person.
Yeah, well, Mumia had an incredible voice though, and was a brilliant guy, of course. And he was Minister of Information of the Philadelphia Black Panthers at the age of
really? Okay, I didn't know that either. Okay.
Yeah, about 15 or 16 years old. He was actually Minister of Information of the Philadelphia Black Panthers. He was such a prodigy. And so he had printed articles in the Yale Law Journal, before he was shot. So he was really getting his ideas out there.
Okay. And, I didn't realize any of that. And it seems to be that the FBI has a special a hatred for Black Panthers. And has just tried to destroy them from the start. Let me ask you a question real quick before we get into too far off track. But
sure.
What do you think of all this stuff about Edward Snowden and the NSA? And now all you hear is them talking about NSA spying and NSA this and that. No one talks about the FBI anymore. No one talks about Cohen. When the NSA has no agents, it's all still the FBI, doing all this stuff, killing people, Yeah. What do you think of that?
Well, I think they all should be looked at. I mean, NSA, CIA, FBI, I agree. But, it's up to us to keep the focus where it should be.
Hey, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Every Friday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, you can find us here on freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, Studio A. Hey, and don't forget, Revolution Radio is a listener-sponsored station. They take no corporate sponsorship. So if you like what you're hearing and you don't hear this kind of stuff on mainstream media, going into the detail we're going into, you got to go to freedomslips.com, click on the donate button, and help support the station. We're here tonight with John Potash. And he's the author of the books, The FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders. U.S. intelligence murderous targeting of Tupac, MLK, Malcolm, Panthers, Hendrix, Marley, rappers, and linked ethnic leftists. John Potash also won the what is that thing? The Guinness Book. No, the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest titles of books. Did you know that?
Yeah, my wife always gives me crap about that.
Yeah, I agree, man. Okay, well, you know, for me, I like my job easy. Give me a short title for a book. The other book coming up is Drugs as Weapons Against Us.
With another long subtitle.
Yeah, well, that's okay. Yeah, it's worth it, man. The CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and other leftists. Okay, now tell us about the other murder attempts on Tupac.
Well, basically, it was about a few weeks before the attempt I talked about, where he was, the allegedly off-duty police officers shot at him in Atlanta. A few weeks before that, he'd been taken to a dance club in New York by this new guy in his life, this Jacques Ignant. This Jacques Ignant was supposed to be a big music promoter. He was from Haiti, and Tupac refers to him in a song Against All Odds in his last album, and refers to him as Haitian Jack. Knew he was working for the feds. Set me up, wet me up. And so that's slang for set him up for the sexual assault situation, and wet him up as in got him shot. And so those two things that happened were basically this guy befriends Tupac when Tupac's on the Above the Rim film set, when he's starring in Above the Rim with Woody Harrelson. And then this guy leads him to this dance club and introduces him to this woman named Ayanna Jackson. Ayanna Jackson leaves her.
Before you get to that, how did this guy get on the set with Woody Harrelson?
This guy could get anywhere somehow. This guy was very powerful and could just do a lot of things, get in anywhere. He had so many connections, this Haitian Jacques Ignant.
Because, Woody Harrelson has his own, history as well,
Yeah, but this guy was, he tried to, he had connections to Madonna. Tupac had actually dated Madonna for a little while.
Right.
And Tupac, she stayed close friends with him actually until he died. But he had all kinds of connections, this guy, Haitian Jacques Ignant. So he befriends Tupac. Tupac was actually hurting on money because the fact that all his money were going to what I call harassment arrests that they had also done to the Panthers, they were doing to Tupac. And what I think were actually specious harassment, specious lawsuits. So all of his money was going to these his legal fees, and he was also taking care of his huge extended family, and and different Black Panthers. And his money was going to activist causes, and so here he is. This guy, Haitian Jacques Ignant, just buys him tons of clothes and jewelry, or like $50,000 Rolex watch, some kind of diamond-studded Rolex watch, and all this different stuff, and gets him into actually the most exclusive clubs in New York, which even Tupac, with his film star and music fame, had a hard time getting into, believe it or not. And so he gets him into one of these exclusive clubs, Nell's. I think it was called Nell's or Nellie's, and introduces Tupac to this woman who worked at the Naval Yard, who was there with her date. She drops her date, starts dancing with Tupac, and then unzips his fly, and she admittedly kissed his penis on the dance floor. Now everyone else said it was a blowjob on the dance floor, but either way, goes home with him that night. They have sex, and then when he's in his hotel, he's still filming. He's still on the film set for Above the Rim. So on his hotel room message, she says, "I like the way you CK." And I want more. And then so Haitian Jack gets her over there a few nights later, and they both say that they had consensual oral sex, Tupac and Ayanna Jackson. And then he says that he felt like he was falling asleep, so he went to the other room and felt like he had been drugged. But either way, he wakes up to accusations that this Haitian Jacques Ignant, touched her against her will. and that Tupac helped it. And so he gets brought up on sexual assault charges, sodomy, forced sodomy, all these different things. And he ends up getting off of all the charges except for touching the woman's butt against her will. And I have the court documents about that. And Haitian Jack touching her butt against her will. And this is a woman who, had consensual sex with him a few nights before. So the police go and erase Tupac's hotel, message machine that of her saying she wanted to have more sex with him. They said they accidentally erased it. And this even came out in the New York Post, that they accidentally erased that tape, that evidence exonerating Tupac. And so the case was even going to go to, the state was actually offering a mistrial in the case because the case was going so bad for them in court. But Tupac said, no, I want to clear my name. I don't, I'm not going to accept a mistrial because I just don't want to be labeled this as, someone who does this kind of stuff. And so the night before the jury came out with a verdict, Tupac was called into a recording studio in New York by an associate of Haitian Jack Ignatz, a guy named Jimmy Henchman Rosemont. And he offered him a huge amount of money just to rap a lyric or two on someone else's album. He gets there, and alleged muggers put a bullet in him, put him on the floor, and put 2 bullets through his skull. And according to a doctor's affidavit, which I have a copy of in my book and in my film, and he miraculously, the bullets barely missed his brain. So this was a murder attempt. This was no random mugging, as the police called it. The security guard told award-winning Las Vegas Sun journalist Kathy Scott that he had a videotape of the incident and offered it to the police, but the police turned it down and closed the case and said, this case is closed. We don't want this evidence.
Is that the one where you can see P. Diddy walking around talking on his cell phone, just walking around like he owns the place?
No. Well, P. Diddy was upstairs during that incident. So I don't know, maybe I don't know if they had more tape that had that part with P. Diddy, but him and Biggie were upstairs actually recording too in a different part of the recording studio lobby. Recording studio. It's a kind of famous studio in Times Square.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's the one then. Yeah, that's the one. And there's all kinds of news footage where you can see Puffy Combs talking on his cell phone, walking in and out of the building, walking through the police investigation, just like he owned the place, man.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
But so they then used that later to split Biggie and Tupac, to say that Biggie helped set that up when Tupac was good friends with Biggie at the time. Tupac helped Biggie break into rap, and so they created this East-West rap war crap, and the media hyped it. I show the same tactics were used there that created the splits between different Black Panther leaders.
Exactly.
And so, they started that whole thing from that. And Biggie, visited Tupac in the hospital, wrote him letters in prison. And, there were so many people trying to convince Tupac that Biggie had something to do with his shooting that he eventually started to believe it. And, so, Suge Knight was part of that, though, that manipulation. He had started that whole East-West versus West, rap thing, and that conflict with Puffy even before he landed Tupac. So he was definitely part of that whole thing, that whole strategy.
And it's the same thing they did with Geronimo Pratt.
Right.
And who was it?
Well, they did it between Huey Newton and the New York Panthers that included Afeni Shakur. They wrote fake letters between the two, and they wrote, and so Tupac got these anonymous letters saying, "You don't know who set you up." Of course, it was Puffy and Biggie that set you up, and so that's one of their tactics, and you could see the same tactics that were used against the Panthers were used in Tupac's life. So yeah, I show a number of those kinds of tactics. But they also used what they call penal coercion in jail, which really messed Tupac's head up. They kept him in solitary confinement for 11 and a half months or so, or 10 and a half months. They gave him basically 1.5 to 4.5 years in jail in maximum security prison for touching a woman's butt against her will who he had consensual sex with.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. And they really messed his mind up in jail with the solitary confinement, with Amnesty International shows all the versions of penal coercion to mess prisoners' political prisoners' heads up, and they used them all against Tupac and more. And so his head was not the same. People close to him said he came out of there like a ghost. He was not himself. He was really, in bad shape mentally. And I show the ways that Death Row Records tried to continue that kind of manipulation, that kind of coercion, and until Tupac was leaving Death Row and having fights with Suge Knight about the fact that he was done his contract and he was leaving. He already started his own new music label, his own film company, and Sekou Odinga's wife was running that music and film company for him. Sekou Odinga, remember, was started the Bronx Black Panthers, and was a lifetime, friend of Tupac's mother, Afeni. So, and Tupac had Sekou Odinga and Yasmin Fula's son as his backup rapper, and he was the top witness to Tupac's shooting. And this happened at the Mike Tyson fight in Las Vegas, and at the next Mike Tyson fight, the night of the next Mike Tyson fight, Yafu Fula was shot in the head.
What were the circumstances around that?
They don't know. He was actually shot twice in the head, but I've got the FBI documents that say an investigating police detective said it was assassinate. It was like a professional hit on Yafu Fula, and it was just he had no crime, he had no record, he had no criminal record. This guy, he was actually a very good-looking guy, and who was could have been a big star himself, and and so they called it drug-related, despite that he's got no criminal record. There's no drugs anywhere around him. There's no drug involvement at all. They often do that to smear someone, to pretend like it was just drug-related.
Where was he killed? Where in Vegas?
Tupac was killed in Vegas, but the next Mike Tyson fight happened in LA or somewhere else, and Yafu Fula was just at his home in New Jersey when this happened, when he was shot.
Oh, he wasn't even at the fight.
He wasn't even at the fight.
Oh, wow.
He was behind Tupac and watched and saw, and he was the top witness and said, "I think I can identify the shooter of Tupac." And he told the police, "I think I can identify the shooter." And they argued, they pretended like there was no witnesses to Tupac's murder, and they had no forthcoming witnesses, but they wouldn't listen to him. He told them. And so he just left town after they wouldn't listen to him, and they just kept lying to the public about not having any forthcoming witnesses. He leaves town, and then they end up shooting him. Someone ends up doing him in a professional hit.
Okay, why don't you get into the whole night? Were there any other attempted murders on Tupac before the night he was killed?
No. I don't have anything else besides, one or two others that aren't worth mentioning, really. But Marin County Fest, there was the strangers punched Tupac for no reason when he was down there, I guess, then shot at him, and police watched and did nothing about it. But that was earlier one. That was in 1992. Nonetheless, it's just, there was 4 or 5 attempts, obviously, at killing Tupac before they actually were successful.
Well, give us a rundown on what happened the night he was killed on the Strip, because you hear a lot of people, they talk about, he was involved in confronting a Crip or a Blood or something like that over a chain and all that kind of stuff. So what do you have? What's your version?
Well, it's interesting. In the last weeks or month of his life, he had settled down with Quincy Jones's daughter, Kadeta Jones. They were engaged to be married. He moved in with her. They were already looking for a new place. They were still in a death row leased home, and they were looking for a new place because he was leaving Death Row Records. People around him said he was settling down so much that, Russell Simmons, the top rap producer, said that he was at a rap party with Tupac, and everybody there was drinking and smoking weed the whole party. Tupac wouldn't touch weed or alcohol and just danced with this handicapped woman all night. And so he was trying to get away from the partying, and he was planning to have kids with Kadeta. And he didn't want to go to Las Vegas. He was very nervous about it. And his bodyguard, the undercover FBI agent, warned him, don't go to Vegas, go to Atlanta. And but he had actually had I think it was a frame up, but a weed possession charge maybe a month or two before that. And the judge actually said, well, I'll let you do a free benefit concert if in place of any jail time or anything else. And meanwhile, he was already out on bail in the other, the sexual assault thing. But anyway, so he said, well, I better go to Vegas because he was supposed to do that 662 was supposed to do a free concert at Club 662 where the money was all going to go to a charity per that court order. And so he said, well, I better go to Vegas anyway, even though I'm very scared. And he was wearing his a flak jacket. He was wearing a bulletproof vest because he was so scared about what could be happening in Vegas. Once he got to Vegas, it was so incredibly hot, as you know Vegas can be. Yeah. He decided he wasn't going to wear the bulletproof vest. But he was also driving his Hummer, and he planned to drive his Hummer because of how much fear he had about it all. And but he went to a pre-fight party, and everyone was drinking and smoking weed. He ended up drinking and smoking weed too, people said. And so at that point, when you're drunk and stoned and you haven't been for a while, you're much more easily manipulated. So he was urging him to drive his Hummer the rest of the night. He gave up driving his Hummer when Suge Knight convinced him to come into his car. They end up seeing Mike Tyson knock the guy out in a minute or two. They are coming out of the fight, and somebody whispers into Tupac's ear, that guy over there is a guy who, just like snatched a chain off of their mutual friend in Death Row's neck just a few days ago. And Tupac had that happen to him where somebody like punched him and snatched a chain off him just a year before. And so he got Tupac to confront this guy, Orlando Anderson, over this snatched chain. And a fight, occurred, and basically Tupac and some Death Row people like started punching this guy over it, and then they stopped. This was in the middle of the MGM lobby. It lasted maybe 15 seconds and it stopped, and they left. Tupac left, everyone left. And this guy, Orlando Anderson, doesn't tell, the security guards come up to, do you want to report this? And he says, no, I'm good. No problems here. Wouldn't report anything. And so they say that Orlando Anderson was a Crip gang member. No one knows for sure. Nick Broomfield investigated it and basically found that this guy, Orlando Anderson, came into a lot of money just after this incident. So somebody
really?
Paid him. Yes, somebody obviously gave him lots of money to do this, for this incident, because he came into all his money right after this incident. And that was used as an excuse.
Did you ever try and talk to him?
He got killed a year or two later.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. And what were the circumstances around that?
It was a hit, and it was identified that one of Suge Knight's cops' cars was involved in that hit.
Really?
Yeah. So many people got killed, that were associated or witnesses or part of this whole situation. Frank Alexander, Tupac's other main bodyguard, who was a witness to Tupac's murder/assassination, and he died mysteriously within the past year or two. And he had been producing some good movies called Tupac Assassination that were getting more and more into some of the stuff that I get into. Now, he didn't go quite as far as I did, but he did implicate a number of his fellow cops working for Death Row Records and Suge Knight and other members of Death Row Records. So it's just, a lot of people have been killed off. It's really sad and ugly. So anyway, they said that fight is what caused, they say, different people say it was the Crips that killed Tupac, and then other people say it's Biggie Smalls that hired the Crips to kill Tupac. And it's all, it's just all cover up.
Well, the thing is,
and other people that investigated it.
Yeah, because if this chain snatching and fight at MGM, how could they pull off this professional?
Exactly.
They boxed in the car with other cars,
right.
and the Las Vegas Strip is no easily maneuverable. Especially after a Tyson fight, there's traffic is insane over there, no matter how many cars you got.
And to say there's no witnesses in front of the Maxim Hotel during a Mike Tyson championship fight is ridiculous. There's hundreds of witnesses. They just
Right.
didn't want to have any witnesses. So
Well, it's not uncommon here for the cops. They won't take the witness statements. And as a matter of fact, the shooting of Eric Scott at the Costco, they told the witnesses, "Get out of here." So,
yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Did you hear, who was it? Chris Rock talk about this?
No.
Chris Rock says, the government hates rappers. He hates rappers. He says, Tupac is shot on the Las Vegas Strip during a Mike Tyson fight, and you tell me there's no witnesses? The government hates rappers. But so he actually originally said that he made fun of people saying that the government killed Tupac, but then he switched up when activists talked to him and turned it around.
Okay, yeah. I saw Chris Rock in person back in New York City.
Yeah.
It was like at the Comedy Cellar, one of those places like that. And I guess I had a couple of. I knocked a picture off the wall right in the middle of his act.
Oh,
yeah, it was quite a night. It was quite a night.
That's pretty amazing to see him in the Comedy Cellar. It's a small place.
Yeah, it might have been. It was either Boston Comedy Cellar. It had to be Boston Comedy Cellar.
That's great.
But it was one of those small places, man. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It really was, man. I've been lucky. I run into a lot of people. I get lucky. Oh, boy. Well, now, how do you think it is that Suge Knight is able to get away with so much?
Well, I call him a low man on the totem pole of U.S. intelligence agents. He was, as I said, he had a situation where he was committing more and more serious crimes and getting more and more serious penalties for those crimes. And all of a sudden, he's still committing those crimes, but isn't charged with anything, despite people going to the police saying he beat me up and he shot at me and here's the bullets in the wall, and got the police to look at the bullets, and they wouldn't charge him. They wouldn't charge Knight, because at that point, I argue, just like they did with undercover agent Eugene, what was his name? It was Gene O'Neill or whatever it was. Eugene O'Neill in the Chicago Black Panthers, who set up Fred Hampton's assassination. The guy, had more serious and more serious charges, and all of a sudden he's let off of everything, and he becomes this undercover agent, and does what he does. And now the court documents are out, and all the police documents are out on that O'Neill guy with the Chicago Black Panthers and setting up Fred Hampton's assassination. But Suge Knight, you can see the same thing going on with him now. So he is scot-free, doing all the drug trafficking, gun running, the vicious crimes, the beating up of people, the disrupting the rap world, especially the political rap conventions, like something called Jack the Rapper convention in Atlanta, which was a political rap convention that Tupac was invited to speak to twice. And so that was his job, was to disrupt the rap world, basically, especially political rappers. And but one of his top jobs was the assassination of Tupac, and that's why after he was done with the murder of Tupac, he finally went to jail, Suge Knight. But and he went to jail on a minor charge, with the kicking Orlando Anderson in the hotel, and he went 2 months to jail. Now with Tupac, one of the reasons that they killed him was, I argue, because in Death Row Records they both had Bloods and Crips working there, and they also had undercover cops who were pretending to be in the Bloods too, or maybe they were in the Bloods. I don't know, but either way, they caused fights and murders inside Death Row Records, at Death Row functions, at Death Row concerts and parties, and nobody was arrested for these things. And with Tupac, what they did is right after Tupac's death, they said the Crips killed Tupac. Orlando Anderson was part of the Crips. Crips killed Tupac, and Death Row had crates of guns delivered to different Bloods gang members who were part of the peace truce. And a war broke out because Suge Knight was spreading the rumor, and Death Row was spreading the rumor that the Crips killed Tupac. So Bloods and Crips were killing each other for about a week or two. Basically, I think at least a week while Tupac was trying to survive in the hospital. He died about 7 days later after being shot. And there were a number of murders because the Bloods and Crips peace truce ended because of those rumors, but activists spread the word that no, the Crips did not kill Tupac, and they think it's something else, and they effectively got the peace truce going again. But so I argue that was another goal of Death Row Records and the killing of Tupac.
What about Snoop Dogg? Now, he was a big part of starting that whole East Coast, West Coast crap.
He actually wasn't.
No?
He actually tried to get around. He tried to end it, tried to get away from it, tried to meet with some East Coast rappers and be part of the solution. And Death Row threatened his life. They beat him up after a concert. And when the police actually, came and grabbed, they grabbed actually Snoop Dogg and arrested him instead of the people that Death Row had beating him up. And
really, wait, where was that in California?
Yeah, it was in California.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
And then there was attempts to shoot Snoop Dogg. Actually, Snoop Dogg's been through, ended up going through a decent amount himself. And so, yeah, Snoop got away from Death Row Records with his, barely with his life. He
he was riding around in an armored car, like the
scared for his life.
Yeah, you can't beat that. Now, but what do you think now? Like, how come he doesn't come out and say, hey, these guys killed Tupac?
Well, he told police that police asked him, who do you think killed Tupac? And he said the guy sitting next to him.
Oh, really?
Knight. Yeah. And so he does, he did open up about that. Now he's got obviously a weed problem. He's got a weed addiction, and he tried to give it up for maybe a month or two. He couldn't quite give it up. So he's, he's got his problems there, even though he's actually, of course, very successful. But he also gave a great speech on behalf of Mumia Abu-Jamal.
Oh, really?
One of the latest Mumia movies. I think it was Mumia Long Distance Revolutionary. He did an excellent job for about 2 minutes detailing why Mumia was so important to the black community and the black movement. Yeah, so it's surprising what he can come out with. Yeah, he did some good work with that.
Yeah, and you just wish they would do more.
You wish they would do more, sure.
Yeah, but then again, that they wouldn't be where they are. They'll get shot down, literally.
Probably.
Yeah.
Sadly enough, because there was also a movement called the Hip Hop Summit Action Network that Russell Simmons started, and he got Columbia professor Manning Marable as part of the board. He got that great who's that head of the Black Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus. I forgot his name. Was from Maryland. I should remember his name, but he was one of the more leftist politicians we've ever had. As part of the board, he got some of the top rappers like P. Diddy was part of the board, and some of the other top rap figures. It's all part of this Hip Hop Summit Action Network, and they actually came out with a 10-point plan that wasn't too dissimilar to the Black Panther 12-point plan, believe it or not.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it was actually very, very left wing, very radical, and it was a good movement. It was a good group. But all of a sudden, each person that was very high up and big in that movement was getting targeted, and I document how each one of them was targeted in my book. And so it really got quieted. It really got quieted in a major way after they got targeted. Each one of them got targeted.
Oh, boy. Do you get discouraged?
Yeah, it is discouraging. But there's so many activists like yourself that are so inspiring, and so many other little people I run into that are doing so many things that I think it's there's good things happening in little spots all over the place.
Yeah, I gotta be honest with you, because I listened to all your stuff in the past couple of days to get ready for the interview, and you're very inspiring as well, man. And it's good to know. Yeah, it's good to know there's people out there, and I didn't realize how rich your history was, and so I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thanks. Sure, it's my pleasure.
I'm still a capitalist. I got to pay my bills.
Of course, we all do. Yeah, of course.
I got to read some ads real quick.
And I hope people help send you money to keep your show alive.
Yeah, me too. I really do. And the ad rates, guys, if you want to advertise on this show, like right now we're on like 15 different stations, and it's growing every week. We're going to be on like 20 different stations a month from now, and iHeart and Blog Talk. So the ad rates are so cheap. You want to get in now while we can keep them cheap for you. Like Amanda from Pacific West Bamboo, who's a sweetheart from the very beginning. She helped out this show, 503-839-8126. She's been a huge supporter of this show, and our producer, Keith Davis, up there in Portland, Oregon. Pacific West Bamboo, your number one source for timber construction, craft-grade bamboo poles, plants, products, and more. They specialize in eco-friendly reclaimed wood products for the home, garden, and they're located in Portland, Oregon. They've been servicing the Northwest for over 10 years. 503-839-8126. And don't forget, any kind of bamboo-related deal you got going on, contact Amanda. She's an expert in this area, and she's a mover and a shaker, doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes that we don't talk about. Mike Gray. Mike Gray's a great guy, too, from infinityhomeplans.com. He has this draftsman company here called infinityhomeplans.com, and you can check them out at their website. They're your resource for 3D 2D draftsman services. They offer a multitude of products, including stock home plans, 2D digital drawing sets, 3D models, renderings, and more. Okay, emailrevealer.com. Hey, let's say, you're Tupac, right? And you're going to court. You want to prove some evidence in your phone. Send us your phone. We can examine that cell phone. We can produce an exhibit that you can use in court for that phone. Or you got a situation here like Mr. Potash, where you need to file some Freedom of Information Act requests and get some documents or pull some court documents, run some searches on people, locates, criminal record searches, all that kind of stuff we can do for you at emailrevealer.com, 800-448-0772. And then we got these wonderful women here in Mexico, the New World Mexican Women. You can Google that. They got this incredible book where they talk about how they want their men who have gone to the United States to earn a living and send them back money. This whole state in Mexico, Guerrero, there's 3 million people living there. And out of that, 800,000 of those people are living in the United States to support this little state in Mexico. And these women, most of the men are gone. As a matter of fact, if you want to meet a single woman, go down to this town because it seems like they're all available. But and they also have the second part of the book is how to make this authentic Mexican jewelry. So we really appreciate their support as well. But we need to support them as well by buying their book. And there's a webinar on their website as well because we really need to keep this town down there supported for what they're doing to help us out. Okay, if you can help us out with that. Okay, and we are here with John Potash. Everyone gets your name wrong, right, man? Potash, right?
That's fine, yeah. I think some of my own family gets our name wrong.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, Opperman, too. I got the same problem. Opperman, Oppenheimer. So now, why don't you tell us about this book here about drugs as weapons against us?
Sure. Yeah, so this was the book I had started originally, and Tupac was a tangent from it. But basically, I just when I was drug and alcohol counseling and finding out more and more about drugs, and starting with my own life with having a drug problem myself in high school, and getting into college and getting a little deeper into it, but then just feeling like I tripped maybe half dozen times, and I was like, I just felt that I lost a little bit, from that tripping, and I didn't have any bad trips, they were fun for whatever they were worth, but afterwards I was like, my grades dropped drastically, and I just thought I gotta stay away from this stuff, and I still somehow connected acid and the 60s, so I still kind of glorified it in my mind, even though I was like, I can't trip anymore because I wanted to bring my grades up, but it took me maybe a year to get my grades back up, but it was a tough year. And afterwards, I ended up just a friend of mine, said, I had the same experience you had with acid, and we both had some abilities that we couldn't quite get back, like just writing a whole paper in our heads, for example, without picking up a pen. And so after college, I started getting into drug and alcohol counseling, and I was just getting all these accounts from clients who they'd say similar things about acid, but then they'd tell me all these things about the heroin and the cocaine and the ecstasy and all this different other stuff going on, and who was dealing, who was trafficking, and what was going on. I actually worked for 6 months as a probation officer before becoming a drug and alcohol counselor, and my coworkers would tell me they'd have these major traffickers that would get off in court while the low-level dealers were, getting time. And so I started exploring that for a short story, and I published a little short story on that locally in Baltimore. And then I started turning that into a novel, which was like a political novel. And so I basically found that the CIA were the largest acid traffickers in the world. A guy named Ron Stark, according to an Italian judge, was connected to the secret, U.S. intelligence community since 1960, and he had set up laboratories on several continents, LSD laboratories and LSD trafficking on several continents. It was incredible, hundreds of millions of hits around the world. He was connected to the Brotherhood of Eternal Love, if you ever heard of them. Leary was connected to them a bit too, but also who was connected to him was the Mellon Hitchcock family of Mellon Bank, as you probably know. Mm-hmm. So there's just MK Ultra was a major operation, I argue, that was using acid to undermine our best activism, the 60s anti-war activism and even activism today. And so that's one, thing I posit. I throw out all the evidence for that in the book. Another aspect of drugs as weapons against us is the fact that the opium traffickers from the opium wars against China on gained global dominance in our country and Britain and the world, basically. Basically the Russell family and the other opium traffickers of the U.S. were Anglophiles and intimately connected with the British opium traffickers of the British East India Company. So when they rose to they had incredible wealth early on from the opium trafficking, and they founded a lot of our colleges and institutions. Skull and Bones was founded on the Russell Family Trust. So everyone who graduated from Skull and Bones would receive the equivalent of $250,000 upon graduation. And
do they still do that today?
They supposedly still get money today. I don't know if it's the exact same amount of money, but it's I'm sure they still get a lot of money when they come out of there. I don't know why they would have stopped that. But many of the wealthiest families in our country were intermarried with the Russell family, and the Pierponts were, all these different, the Cabots and the Lodges and the Bushes, the Harrimans, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, Julius Pierpont Morgan, the Pierponts. It's where a lot of his wealth came from, and so they're all interconnected. And it turns out, they gained global dominance in our world today.
Yeah, from the opium trade.
From the opium trade, and
so what do you think? You think, John? You think that one day they just all stop doing it?
Of course not. Right. Yeah, right.
No, but I'm sure by now they've stopped. No.
They're like, we don't need this money. We're not going to do this anymore. So the two longest wars in our history are the Vietnam War in the Golden Triangle of Opium, and the Afghanistan War in the Golden Crescent of Opium. They actually lie at two ends of the exact same mountain range.
Really?
Okay, Golden Crescent and the Golden Triangle, that mountain range for some reason has the most fertile areas for opium in the world. And so that's where the most opium has come from in our history, in the world's history, is from those two areas. And that Golden Triangle area is all around it is Vietnam, is Laos, is Burma, and is also that portion of China where the most opium was ever grown in the history of man. And that was, because of the opium wars when British defeated China, when China tried to get rid of opium in their country and stop the British from bringing in opium. So it's really an amazing history of opium and how they gained so much power with that. And they came to buy it, basically the Harrimans and the Rockefellers and the J.P. Morgans bought off all the newspapers in our country in the 19-teens. And they came to dominate all the media by our time. And, even people like Carl Bernstein followed the Senate Church Committee's report when they were investigating things. And the Senate Church Committee found that well over 400 members of the media lived dual lives in their work for the CIA. And Bernstein listed these people, and these people were the ownership of all the major media organizations. ABC, NBC, Associated Press, UPI, etc. So that's how they come to control our information. That's why independent news groups like yours, what you're doing is so important, and what your sponsors, and your channels are doing, like what Anna and Cindy and all are doing, is so important.
Well, let me ask you this now, because like you were saying, like you kind of thought that LSD, you related it to like a revolutionary movement, like, you know what I mean? And so did I. But
I did, yeah. I used to.
Now, how do you feel about marijuana, though? A lot of people say marijuana has all these medical benefits now and stuff like that. And how do you feel about the negative, positive? What do you think?
I'll just say when I say I related LSD to the '60s and the revolution, that was when I was growing up as a teenager, and then by the time I was out of college, I was like, wait a minute, something else is going on here, and I got to rethink all this. And I come to find out, when I investigated for over, literally I've been investigating this for about 20, 25 years now. I come to find out that the CIA was behind most of that LSD and was trying to couple it with progressive activism to make you think that it's part of progressive activism and revolutionary activism. And I argue it's really the opposite. It actually just takes away from our best abilities to do what we do as activists. I think it in the same way, I found study after study that shows that it's just hurting our best abilities to do what, our best work. And it's actually causing some damage. And that damage, it can go away if you get away from it long enough. But who wants to give up a year of their life, trying to get back to where they were,
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. Now, what do you think? And it's interesting, too. Well, even before we get into the weed thing, it's interesting, too, how there seems to be a looking the other way of groups like the Yippies and other radicals and leftist organizers, because there's a lot of drug dealing that goes on. Let's just call it what it is. There's a lot of shenanigans that goes on, and money on the side stuff, and you would think with all the surveillance and all the stuff going on that this stuff would get shut down overnight, but it doesn't. Mm-hmm. Only when they grab somebody and then they have an informant working for them as well, like a guy like Al Sharpton. If you look at that case.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like the Yippies, you guys, did some good stuff, of course. I mean, I think Abbie Hoffman was a fantastic activist in the 60s and the early 60s and all. Him and his wife were doing great work. But, the guy who gave him his first hit of LSD was working for MK Ultra. And, and Abbie had not even smoked weed yet before he tried LSD.
Really? Well, one thing is, you talk about COINTELPRO. I believe it was Abbie's lawsuit that uncovered the COINTELPRO program. Was it?
No. It was. I think it was the guys that invaded the FBI office in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, that uncovered all the COINTELPRO documents. That was in 1971.
Okay, so then what do you think about marijuana? A lot of people nowadays think it's medical uses and stuff like that. What do you think?
Well, I'm fine with real medical use of marijuana, and in a perfect world, people could smoke weed all they want. I don't care. I mean, I used to like weed. I don't anymore. Whatever. It's just who has?
Is that
time?
where you got the name Potash?
Yeah, I know. People used to, kid me all the time in high school because I did love weed then. Yeah. And so they called me pothead and all, and it fit. So, I had no problem with it. But they, now it's just, it obviously takes up so much time. I know, even friends that smoke weed once a week. I mean, who's got the time for hours to be stoned for hours? When you're trying to work a full-time job and you're trying to do activism on the side, it just erodes your time for activism. So I argue that even people that don't have a full-fledged addiction, or even are just social users and don't even have an abuse issue, are taken away from their ability to become activists with regular weed use. And of course, it affects your memory a little bit. I mean, not greatly, but a little bit. And the problem also is that people are lacing weed with things that are messing people's heads up in a big way. And people that get into the spice are really getting delusional. K2 and spice are making people delusional. It's supposedly artificial marijuana.
And it's synthetic. You're right. It's synthetic and it's legal.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
So of course really, it's for you,
Yeah, I was working at an inpatient facility where we were getting delusional people in there, for the addictions mental health unit, getting delusional people in there that wouldn't come down for a week or two or three. They remained paranoid and delusional from the spice and K2. It's really dangerous stuff. So, you never know what you're going to get in your weed. And, yeah, sure. As medical marijuana, I'm fine with it if it's for a legitimate medical issue. But so many people I've been hearing about are just saying, well, I'm stressed and I have anxiousness, so can you
Yeah.
prescribe marijuana, and that's just too bad because then they all of a sudden become hooked on weed and they become lazier. Everyone becomes lazier on weed. I mean, it's just, there's a few exceptions that Tupac Shakur actually was so incredibly passionate and so sure he was going to die, soon that he was trying to, he was working his ass off despite getting high for a while he was at Death Row Records. But most people get lazier on weed, and that's just the way it is. And but there's some exceptions. Don't get me wrong. And you get so many people that get into the medical marijuana for the wrong reasons, and it's too bad. But for people that really could use it for medical reasons, great. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I got you. I stopped. I was a big smoker. I was a yippie, right? I smoked tons of pot, man. Well, let's face it. But I stopped, man, in the early 80s, man, like 82, 83, man. It was making me paranoid. And it was just getting too strong. And now it's
getting so strong now. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah, that can't be by accident. Because you know what? We've been cultivating marijuana for all these years. And suddenly in the last 10 years, they learned how to make this crazy marijuana. And and again, I'll say it again. I know firsthand guys who, guys involved in High Times Magazine and big stuff that were informants, and working against us. But it seems like, oh yeah, I'll tell you off the air, man. Stuff firsthand. But even like Yippie headquarters, there was huge amounts of marijuana there, And if we were under surveillance and the police wanted to stop what we were doing, they could have easily come in and raided the place and then shut us down.
Right. They only use it they do it very selectively, like putting John Sinclair in jail for years and certain other people in jail for years, Like the Rolling Stones said that they had their place immaculate, and it made sure they had no weed or no drugs, but they got drugs planted in their place. And an MK Ultra agent actually was the first one to give Mick Jagger his first hit of acid.
Oh, really?
And and then Mick Jagger set up a camera to film a cop planting weed in his car. So there's all kinds of ways they've been using drugs to to frame and mess different activist musicians up. At the time, Mick Jagger was speaking out against the Vietnam War.
Well, the whole story of Timothy Leary, the guy, his entire public life had an open case. The guy had always was like out on bail. And that's, and then what do you think of that story though about how he claims he busted out of that minimum security jail?
Yeah, I think that was a CIA operation. It was. I mean, it was a CIA operation. CIA basically gave him the money, basically to get him either to or from Algeria. And the Weather Underground was duped. They were duped into freeing Timothy Leary. I mean, it was a minimum security jail. You could just hop over a fence. It's really nothing. But either way, whatever, they helped him get out of jail.
The story I heard was that because his thing is how he climbed on telephone wires and all this kind of stuff. I heard he was sitting at a bus stop when they came to pick him up.
That's fun.
Okay, yeah. I think they let him out the front door.
Well, the Brotherhood of Eternal Love helped fund that, and the Brotherhood of Eternal Love was where Ron Stark was working, and he's the guy that was connected to the CIA since 1960. And that's who funded the Brotherhood of Eternal Love was the the Mellon Hitchcock family.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and that's and they're all connected. They'd all been OSS. Peggy Hitchcock was one of the richest women. I mean, it's just one of the wealthiest. Mellon Bank. It's one of the wealthiest families in the world, and they're intimate with all the U.S. intelligence and the Republican Party and all that. So They funded all that stuff, and then the CIA actually funded with some of his trips back and forth from Algeria, where the Black Panthers in exile was, Eldridge and Kathleen Cleaver, and Timothy Leary brings 30,000 hits of acid over there. So,
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and Eldridge Cleaver first accepts him, as just to kind of join with the Weather Underground because Eldridge Cleaver did like the Weather Underground. But then when Leary got there and he found he had 30,000 hits of acid, he put him under house arrest. He said, "You're going to get us kicked out of this country." and and he said he put a letter out to the movement and said, your God is dead. He's brain dead. And so he kicked him out. He expelled him from Algeria, from the Black Panther in Exile encampment. And so I think that Leary was trying to turn them onto acid and trying to mess their heads up.
Okay, we only got a few minutes left. It's at 6:53, so the show ends about 6:58. We got about 5 minutes. Okay. Oh, not even less, man. She's telling me we got like 3 minutes left.
Okay.
Now you said you'd be willing to stay for an after show for a little bit.
Sure.
Okay, great. I love you. I knew you would, man. Okay,
Thanks.
So guy, I love you, man. So if you want to call in with questions for John Potash, it's 702-605-4894. 702-605-4894, or you can Skype me on ed.opperman on Skype. But what do you want to say before we, because we're going to lose freedom subs in a second.